So in this bottle, I have 20,000 mustard seeds. And the 20,000 mustard seeds represent the number of children who die each day from preventable diseases. Has anyone ever been in a crowd of 20,000 people? I think I was at a U2 concert one time, and there was at least 20,000 people there. And I was in a band in a past life in rock and roll where we performed, we went on the road, and we played with Everclear one time, and I think that we played to a crowd of about 14,000 people. And what I remember was the sound of the wall of sound that came from the crowd. It was deafening, it was amazing. So I was used to wearing ear protection on stage for the amplifiers that we had, but it was just amazing the sound of that many people, and that was 14,000. So to make my point today, I want to show you what it looks like when you have 20,000 children that die. When I was preparing for this speech, I got chills because I realized that the 20,000 children are here with us tonight. They're waiting for us to see, what to respond to. They're waiting and they're watching. And they really need our help. 20,000, that's just one day. 2 days from now, 3 days from now, past the weekend, we might or might not remember this, but that's 60,000 children that passed by in 3 days. That's as many people who died in the Vietnam War, from the US side at least. And the organizations that are in a position to help these children, they need help too. And I want to pose a simple ethical scenario. If a dying child was within arm's reach, what would you do? And what I want to suggest is that the children of the world are within arm's reach. They're a click away, they're a tap away, we can learn more about the world, and there are some ways to respond to it. And I want to start by asking a question, what if? A series of questions. And I want to start with some things that I found inspirational when I was doing my research on the PhD that I did. One of the things that I found inspiring was the space race. JFK and a lot of other people got together and they asked the question, what if? What if we could get to the moon? Not just what are all the reasons we can't or haven't so far, but how can we actually do it? And they set out to do it and they worked together and they accomplished that eventually. Another thing that I find inspiring is one laptop per child. I did some volunteer work with them, and they're an organization that asked the question, what if we could get a computer to as many children as possible around the world to help them with their education? And it was interesting because sometimes people would raise the question, well, why are you helping with education when that child doesn't even have basic sanitation? Or that sort of, back and forth debate. And the answer that started forming in my mind was, well, I think that we need to meet all those needs, not just one, but how can we meet those needs in a balanced way? So I started thinking about that, and that led to some of the things that I'm going to talk about today. I want to ask the what if question. What if we could create a nonprofit stock market? When I look at all the challenge and logistical need in the world, sometimes it can be paralyzing, and I have a feeling like more resources could be brought into play if we felt less overwhelmed, if we felt less paralyzed. And I think if we look at the way that the stock market works, that there might be some lessons from that it might allow resources to be more effectively allocated to where they're needed most, that it might draw more resources into play. And I don't think it's just an answer of money. I think that money is not the only answer, but I think that if we start thinking about how we could engage and learn more in a sustainable way, I think that might be an answer. So if we set out to turn the stock market on its head, if you look at the for-profit stock market, it's a financial ecosystem. And a nonprofit stock market, I think that could also be a financial ecosystem. A lot of moving parts where people work together to put the pieces into place. In a for-profit stock market, you have a variety of indicators and tools. And I think that you could have the same thing in a nonprofit stock market. You could have analysts and tools to give a variety of information that would allow you to decide how to invest in a nonprofit organization and to really think of it as an investment, not just a one-time thing, not just because you feel guilty about a disaster, but to work with things in an ongoing way and to build hope because you're seeing the ongoing story. In a for-profit stock market, you have a sense of ownership, shares. You might have an expectation of financial ROI, which is return on investment. And I think that the same things could come into play in a nonprofit stock market. A sense of ownership, maybe virtual shares, and maybe an expectation of social return on investment, whatever that means. I think it's a start of a conversation. I'm not saying that I would have all the answers, but I think that the questions are worth asking. In a for-profit stock market, you might look at it and say that the decisions that investors make guide subsequent decisions. A successful investment decision was a signal to other people, hey, that's something that maybe I'd want to invest in. And I think that you could have the same thing in a nonprofit stock market, and that is part of what the market dynamic would bring into play, where when you have a system that shows the feedback of people investing in nonprofit organizations, looking at their impact, that would help to draw further resources into play. In a for-profit stock market, it rewards performance. The system guides resources towards where they're most effectively used. So a profitable company is efficient, and it's making a product that people want, and a series of things happen to make it profitable. And then the system rewards that performance. I'm not sure what the best things would be in a nonprofit stock market, but I think that we could think about them. I think it could be a combination of numbers, and where you can't put numbers to things, maybe it's stories. But I think that you could have information come through that could help you or I to decide where we'd like to invest our money. So what would it look like? Just imagine for a moment a nonprofit portfolio, or a mutual fund, or an analyst, or ratings. What would that mean? I don't even know if I know what that would mean, but I think it's an exciting question to ask. And I think it's worth looking at the for-profit stock market and some of the lessons that they've learned about how to convey information. And one of the things that they attempt to do is to basically simplify, to bring a lot of complex information into a more simplified format. So I might think of a way to draw information about a nonprofit in a way that just displays a graphic or something like that. And I wanted to ask the question, what if color could help to provide balance for a nonprofit portfolio? Because there's still that question of complexity. Like, there's all the need in the world, how do I know where to put my limited resources? And I think that color could be one of those answers. Green is already in the public consciousness with the environment and the green movement, and maybe that's one sector. Red is starting to become part of the public consciousness with the work of Bono and Data and the Join Red brand, where you can buy clothing, and then some of the money goes towards the Global Fund to fight HIV. I think blue could maybe mean community. And that's just one example of how color could potentially allow people to say, well, if I wanted to give $1, if $1 was all I had to give, how could I split it up to balance things so I'm not just hitting that one sector? And that kind of goes back to that question I was asking myself when I was volunteering for one laptop per child. What's a way to simplify things? And maybe color would be one way. So I also want to ask the question, what if color could help us monitor our world? And I really do think that the world is within, the entire world is within our arm's length. And it's interesting because if you take a 16 by 12 pixel grid, you can represent nearly all the nations in the world, about 192, and the number changes from time to time. But literally, what would it be like if you could hold the whole world in your hands, look at it, and the color of a pixel would alert you to something that you're interested in? Maybe it's health issues or natural disasters or whatever it is. What if you could hold it and look at it and then learn more? I think that a market-based system could help with engaging people on an ongoing basis, and that color might be a way, again, to moderate very complex data, to take it and to show you at a glance what's going on in the world. And that color simplification might be part of the solution. And I think if we could develop tools like that could coexist with something like looking at your social network activity or news or whatever with color coding there, and it could be a ubiquitous user experience that might be helpful. And I think literally it would become a situation where you've got the whole world in your hands. So I want to ask too, what if it was social? So I think that would be a natural place to go and maybe a natural starting point for experimentation. In this slide, Rachel Isdale just invested in the American Red Cross. So imagine people talking about that. What does it mean to invest? What do I think about that or whatever? I think that the social dimension is really a good starting point. The other thing that I think would be really interesting is to ask, what if social games could provide you with currency that you could invest in a nonprofit stock market? So if you're not aware, there's a huge growth in virtual economies with social games where people either get free virtual currency or they buy it. And it's really an entire economy. And that might be something to tap into. Maybe people get free currency, but maybe a corporate sponsor provides some and says, with whatever contest you win, you can take this to the nonprofit stock market and make the world better. The other interesting question I think would be worth asking is, what if the nonprofit stock market itself was a social game or had some kind of game dimension? One of the fundamental challenges in working with motivating people, inviting them to invest in a nonprofit organization is, it's just motivation, time of the day or whatever it is. And I think if you made it more fun, like even if you just had ranking or points or some sense of competition, what they call gamification these days, even if you just made what would look like E-Trade but made it a little bit more fun, maybe that would be enough for some people. But I also think it would be worth asking, what if you just made it such an enjoyable experience? Some people might play it just for fun. Maybe it's like Monopoly, but you call it philanthropy, or whatever it is. I think there's a lot of interesting possibilities. And basically today, I just wanted to invite you to consider adopting this principle. Do not withhold good from those who deserve it when it's in your power to act. Thank you.